What is going on, my fellow Summit Chasers, and welcome to another episode of the Summit Chasers podcast. Very excited for this one. We're changing things up a little bit. So we would usually do a separate week in review with the Summit crew, we called it. But we got to thinking, there's so much value in these ones, and we have so much fun with them too, because it's just the three of us, the three partners in Summit Chasers Network, and we're just riffing. And we talk about some of the stuff that, like some of our frameworks, some of our philosophies, and how we work with our clients, and just some of the things that we do in our day-to-day lives, and the way that we grow, and the way that we try to keep learning, and all that kind of fun stuff. We get a little bit of insight into our lives. It's just fun. And we also highlight some local businesses that we really believe in and we really like. One of which is near and dear to my heart this week, and you'll see it in the episode. But we wanted to be more authentic. And with the other podcast, that's still going to keep going. We're still going to upload those episodes regularly, once or twice a week. I'll have with the very special guest. The next one is going to be with an awesome person, somebody I'd call a friend of mine, Walker McKay. Absolutely amazing sales-focused conversation, and I love talking sales. He's a character. He was so much fun to talk to. Very knowledgeable. I loved all the stuff he said about sales. So check that one out. That one's going to be coming up in a few days. Probably come out on Wednesday, I believe, with that one. So keep an eye out for that one. But with these ones, we're going to go into with our part of our framework, the Summit Chasers framework. So the Summit Success framework. We call it the Summit Laws of Leadership. And there's 10 of them. And we only talk about the first two in this one because we can go into so much depth into each one. So we don't want to short you and talk about all of them and only hit each one very little bit. So we go into the first two. We talk about some of our grow or die moments, some updates from us, and some of the things that we have going on here at Summit Chasers, some of which are pretty wild updates. You're going to want to check this out. You're going to want to keep watching. You're going to want to subscribe to see what we're going on, what we have going on, and what we're going to get up to. A lot of it's going to be on a separate YouTube channel. I think we're going to call that one Summit Chasers Life. Not sure on the name yet, but for right now, that's what we're going to be calling it. But you'll see. It's some very exciting, very different, interesting stuff. But we hope you love this episode. It's a long one. It's about 50 minutes on top of me talking to you right now. But sit back, get your notebooks out, maybe take out a Modelo and maybe some beef dip, some au jus, and enjoy the show. All right, let me do my thing. Let me practice.
What's going on, Summit Chasers?
I'm going to keep that in. What's going on, Summit Chasers? Welcome to another Summit Success. What are we doing right now? This isn't a Summit Success series. This is a week in review with the Summit crew. Sorry, I'm in like my Summit Success series. I'm in my Summit Success series mode. But we skipped last week because we were actually in Vegas at the International Builder Show. It's really hard for me to say the acronym IBS. We were at IBS in Las Vegas. It's like, are you okay? Do you need help? Like, is everything clear?
I have not wanted to say that to you, but every time you guys were talking about this conference, like I couldn't not think about that, and so I'm just feeling seen. Actually, Zach, like I appreciate that someone else is like.
Well, there was a really go ahead, Adrina.
I was gonna say what you're gonna say, so I'm gonna steal it from you because it was so funny. One of the companies that we talked to, their service was internet, and it was called Fiber Fast Link or something like that. And so they had stickers made that said, I survived IBS with Fiber Fast.
Oh my God.
So clever.
That was so funny. So clever.
So clever. Like, find a way to stick out. If you're a business owner listening to this, which I hope that's the case, is if you go to these shows, just find a way to stand out, because they drew us in with cookies.
Yeah, they were making cookies like right there.
So good. And they were legit like cookies. Like, they weren't just like cookies they bought at the store and then heated them up. They were baking cookies. And he said that the day before they had cigars. Mm-hmm. They were cutting cigars and stuff. So, like, super nice guy. I can't wait for him. He's actually probably going to be on the podcast at some point. And he's going to actually be, when we release the footage, and we'll talk about that in a little bit here, from IBS. Now I can't say it without laughing. From the International Builder Show, he'll be on there. But really nice, really sweet guy. Has a really cool. He's very in tune with like the vision and the mission that he's on. And it's not just, you can tell he's not just, didn't just start this or get involved with this company just to kind of make money, or he needed the money sort of thing. It's very clear on his purpose and why he's doing it. But cookies was what got you initially. I'd said no initially, and then you're like, yeah, I want a cookie. Then I couldn't say no after that. So it's marketing 101. Give people what they want.
One of my other favorite moments watching you guys in Vegas is I started watching the Dan Ches Summit Chaser series podcast, and you're on the roof in Vegas. Zach, it feels like you almost are like so hot you can't even breathe up there when you're like talking.
That's Vegas. You know?
I was dying. I'm like, like, it kind of brought me back to like The Hangover when they're like on the roof, and I'm just like, I don't know why people in Vegas go to roofs anymore. Like, we all know what happens. There's 3 movies about it, you know?
Yeah.
It wasn't a roof at a hotel, at least. Like, I didn't get the bed thrown off the roof in Caesars or wherever they were at in the show. But it was just so bright. I just wasn't used to that. Like, there's no clouds there.
Yeah.
It was really windy. It was really, really windy. But it wasn't too hot. It was just so bright. So I was like squinting the whole time. Yeah.
Chaos.
Yeah. But I loved it. I love the intros.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to be more, especially with what we're about to be announcing right now, actually pretty soon here with what we're doing. We're trying to be more, like, we see all these people, like, well, they're YouTubers or they're the business consultants, or they're trying to be some experts, or they are experts in their field. They try to be so almost not human, like not like they're so polished. It's almost like kind of ridiculous. Yeah. Like, and that's just not innately who we are. And it's also like the next generation that's kind of starting to take these businesses over or start the businesses. Like, they're just like they have a much different avenue to get where they are. And a lot of times it's not, the MBAs and the clean cuts and wearing suits all day and that kind of thing. So we're trying to be more ourselves.
You're normal people. We're all normal people, right? Yeah. Just doing a thing.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and that's when we're at our best, when we're not trying to be something else. Because remember, it's impossible to be creative. It's impossible to be honest 100% of the time too. So yeah, we're going to be a little bit more of ourselves. And with that being said, this is a good segue, everybody. We have an announcement to make officially. And I did a couple podcasts this week where I kind of announced it on there. At least I told people about it, but they won't be released for a while. So this will be released here really soon. But we have a very cool announcement. Adrina, do you want to announce it?
No, go ahead.
Okay. So we are selling pretty well everything that we own. Well, she owns. And we have 2 Jeeps. We have, we sold this giant mirror. This, like, I don't know what kind of mirror it is.
I don't want to talk about it. It's the Anthropologie Primrose mirror. I absolutely love this mirror so much, and he made me sell it.
I didn't make her sell it. She sold it on her own. If she was adamant about not selling it, it would have been whatever. But we sold it. Yeah. And unfortunately, the people that bought it, they broke it. But it was a $1,600 mirror, and they broke it. Yeah.
They drove 3 hours to pick it up too. They didn't make it home.
So, but anyways, we're selling everything, including a very expensive mirror, an overpriced mirror. And we bought a travel trailer, and we have 2 Jeeps and 4 dogs. And we are going to travel the country, being the United States, and we are going to visit as many small local businesses as we can and find out how they got to where they are. What are their struggles? What are their triumphs? And just highlight them as best as we can. And we're going to travel around, and that's what we're going to do. And we're going to stay in our trailer. We have it set up so that it can be fairly self-sufficient. Got the extra batteries. It's going to be solar powered. It's light enough so our little eco diesel Jeep Gladiator can pull it quite easily. And we are going to document the whole thing and show these businesses off and highlight these businesses and our struggles and our grow or die moments, which we may literally get into some of those grow or die moments where you're either learning or we're not eating for a few days. So, but that's going to be the fun of it. And I'm so excited about this. I'm nervous in a lot of ways. Like I've done the bare minimum camping and stuff before. My dad used to take me out all the time, and we would just survive with tents and a gun and like that. Like we'd have to trap our food. Like we did it for very short periods of time. But we knew where the vehicle was and we could get out whenever we wanted. But will be the first time where like I have to do this and kind of take charge, because you've never done this before, right, Adrina?
No, I would not even have considered myself like an outdoorsy girl prior to this. So this is brand new. This is
You
brand
guys,
new.
I am just so proud of you. I can't wait to see how this goes down. Like this is truly heroic what you guys are doing, and like really throwing yourselves behind the whole mission of our
Yeah.
company. And I just like I'm really, really proud of you. And I will be following along from my like folk like tethered home in New York while you guys are doing this. And I will be like sending you guys packages wherever you need, like in Hunger Games, or like, you know what I mean, where they like drop.
Absolutely. Well, one of us has to be
uh,
grounded, right? Well, at least one of us has to be grounded. But yeah, it's going to be an adventure. But I mean, there's a few, and again, yeah, we want to highlight the businesses, and we want to meet as many local business owners as we can, and not even just local, but just business owners in general. And but the other thing is too is that we want to prove a point that you can live the life that you want. And we're going to a bit of an extreme, right, with traveling everywhere and doing the trailer life and that kind of thing while doing it. But we want to prove a point that you can run a successful business, be successful, and help a lot of people while you do it, and kind of live the life that you want, even if it is a crazy one, like we're going to. I'm not going to say attempt, but no, we are going to do it. So that's, and then also Adrena and I, to be a little vulnerable, we've been through a lot in the last few years. We both came off divorces and big changes in our life, and we need kind of a reset. We need to, what do we call it? Like shedding?
Yeah.
Yeah, like shed all the stuff that you just either don't need or reminds you of a time that reminds you of the person that you're just not anymore. Right.
Yeah.
It's going to be kind of starting over again, but also allow us to just really be focused on ourselves and Summit Chasers. And I'm very excited to bring the kids along. The kids are going to be there for at least quite a bit of it, some of it
Yeah.
for sure, and get to show them. Like I got to teach Mason how to fish, and Brinley how to
Me and
get out
Brinley
of
will
her
be scared of bugs together.
Yeah, get her and Brinley out of their comfort zones, and it's going to be so much fun. So yeah,
how do they
that's the
feel?
big announcement.
Are they looking forward to it, or they're like, oh my, they don't know what to expect?
I don't
I don't
know
think they
that
get it.
they haven't put two and two together yet, which is fine. They're 4 and 6, so we can't really expect them to fully grasp it. But I think Mason is going to have so much fun. I think Brinley is going to be a little bit similar to me, where it's going to take some warming up and getting used to. But then once she realizes that she's completely safe, that Daddy's got her, then she'll be good to go. And I hope I'll be the same eventually. So we'll see.
You will. By the time we come back, Adrena's going to have like the war paint on. She's going to have like some knives on her hip and like an axe and like a gun too, and she's going to like have like squirrels over her shoulder and like here's dinner. And
No,
I'm just kidding. I hope that's not totally the case.
definitely
Although like
not.
somewhere in between. But it'll be good. It'll be great. It'll be great. I'm very excited to bring everybody along. Well, you're going to get. We're going to be keeping you updated very frequently. So it'll be fun to see kind of what we put out, to like where we like calling you like this is so hard, Chrissy. But then in our YouTube videos, it's like this is amazing. We're learning so much.
Yeah,
right.
it'll
I
be
think
like
that
the Instagram versus reality.
Yeah, exactly.
actually,
Exactly.
I'm going to go against that and say that I think one of our goals, like Zach was saying at the start, is to just show up as we are and show some of the hard things that we're going to have to go through and that we're going to have to learn, and the way that we've navigated it. Because I think, like we've all talked about, life is far too glamorized on social media. It's far too much like, oh, look at me, or you look at entrepreneurs and you're only seeing when they're in their private jets, or they're going to amazing dinners or shows, or they're shopping, and you don't actually see the work that goes into it on a day-to-day. You don't see the fact that they're working 7 days a week, 12-hour days, just constantly. Like Zach and I joke, we'll talk to people and they'll be like, oh, happy Friday, have a great weekend. And we're like, it's literally another day to us right now. Like there's no differentiation between Monday to Friday and a weekend. A weekend is still working for us. So I think that those things are far too glamorized. And I think one of our goals is going to be to just show some of that reality that's going on behind the scenes that you wouldn't typically see. Because I think it's far more relatable and just shows people that they're not alone in their struggles that they're going through either.
Well, look, my grow or die moment this week was going to be that I can't figure out AirPods, like, and you guys are like, we're selling everything and getting in a trailer and living our life and running around this country and being amazing people. And I'm like stuck in my office being like, I just can't figure out these fucking AirPods. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Like, they keep switching on, they keep switching off. Like, I can't figure it out. And I was like, wow, I'm like really showing my age now. I just wanted to throw them over the ferry when I was on my way home the other night, and I was just like, this is too much. I can't even do it. So anyway,
did you get them figured
out? We're all
out,
having
though?
moments, you know?
Absolutely. Did you get them figured out?
No, I know how to like listen to music or a book on them. And I think that's what I'll just be using them for, is like listening to music or something while I'm walking around, and I don't want to have a wire. But phone calls, I'm out on that. Like, it's too much.
That's so interesting.
Connect. Yeah.
They should.
Yeah.
I can't figure out like the noise behind me. It also blocks out everything around me, which freaks me out, because when I'm like commuting, I like to be able to hear what's happening around me. You know, it's like I feel like a little caught off guard. But
you can turn. Did you get the AirPod Pro?
Yeah.
Okay, so you can turn the noise cancellation off.
I know, but I think it's like ruining the experience for the person on the phone, though, because they're like, there's so much happening behind you, and I can't even hear what you're talking about. I was like, I don't know, man. I was like, let me just take these out, and I'll call you right back from my actual phone. Like,
interesting.
Look, like, not everything's for everybody. Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. But before we get into the grow or die moments, which we will, that's one of our favorite parts, is we are going to change up the order a little bit. We want to highlight some businesses this week. We do it every week, but we want to highlight some businesses earlier in the episode this week. And then do we decide, are you going to go or am I going to go? I'm going to go.
Oh, me? No, you go. You go, Zach. You go, Zach.
All right. Yeah. So we want to highlight a company with the owner is a very, very dear brother of mine, not literally, but a brother of mine. And that is Arizona Off-Grid Solutions. And the owner of this company, his name is Stephen Ullman. And this guy has... to say he's been through a lot would be a very big understatement. I'm not going to go into details, but he used to be a Porsche technician. He's a veteran. He spent 18 months deployed in Afghanistan, and then to Porsche technician. And I met him in Las Vegas when he was just kind of getting his life back together. And he was like one of those rock bottom, like drugs and the wrong crowd kind of thing. And he's built his way back to... He is an actor as well. He went to Toronto and he went to this screen. It was a competition. It's kind of like American Idol, but for actors sort of thing, and just not as well known. But that's the same place where like Ashton Kutcher got his kind of first got discovered, and he apparently did very, very well. And this isn't a guy who's like he's not like a Henry Cavill or stuff. Like, he has to work really, really hard for everything, and he does. And he bought a big piece of land in Arizona. It's about a year and a half ago, I think, when I was actually living with him at the time, and he bought this big piece of land in Arizona. I guess it might have been 2 years ago, even.
Yeah,
two and a half years ago.
Yeah,
it would have been like 2 or 3 years ago. And he bought, I think it was like 20 something acres in the middle of the desert, and he didn't know how to. I mean, he knew how to live off. Like, he could rough it, right? Like, he could live in the trailer and hook up a generator and that kind of stuff. But he taught himself over those 2 years how to create a completely off-the-grid sustainable ecosystem in the desert. So he designed and built his whole solar system. He built a cabin out there. He built the plumbing, and he wired everything and everything, like literally everything. And he said he hasn't needed to use any outside resources other than what he generates himself for the last 6 months. So, with everything going on right now, like, there's a lot of uncertainty with, like, everyone says like World War III looming and everything mounting, whether it's in Israel or in Ukraine, even here at home, in the UK, there's farmers that are going on strike because it's so difficult for them to produce food for us and make a living doing so. Is just the importance of being able to be self-sustaining. Maybe not to the same degree that he is, where it's like he doesn't need anybody, right? Maybe not to that degree, but at least the knowledge and the basic setup in order to be self-sufficient, he's he's mastered that, and he now wants to be able to do that for other people. So Arizona Off-Grid Solutions, we really want to highlight that. Amazing guy, and you will get the best service, I can tell you that. And he will kill himself to make sure he does things right for you, right? Like he will do everything he needs to. So you can reach out to him if you're interested in learning, even just learning more about this kind of stuff. And he might be able to at least teach you if you're not directly in the vicinity, if you're not close to Arizona where he's at. He's pretty close to Vegas, about an hour and a half drive from Vegas in Arizona. But you can reach him at 813-399-6190. We'll leave a link to all that below. I'll leave a link to his Instagram and all that kind of stuff as well. You can kind of see what he's up to. But yeah, really excited to highlight Arizona Off-Grid Solutions. Cool?
Amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful. All right, let's get into some grow or die moments. So, Chrissy, I know we talked about working AirPods, but I want to know, how was that a grow or die moment? What did you learn? How did you grow from it?
Okay, well, this was a new, like, I had to adapt a new piece of technology, and I think I jumped in too quickly. So I got my AirPods, I put them in, I couldn't figure them out. I sounded like a jamoke on all my calls. Like no one knew what was happening. I felt like an amateur, and it really made me think, all right, look, you have to stay relevant. You have to be able to use modern tools that are available for you, but you have to do the research to make sure you're using them correctly. It's not as intuitive as you think it's going to be. And so for me, I think that, I mean, I know I was like joking around about them, but I do really see the value in them. I mean, I really hate having headphone wires everywhere. They're crazy, and I'm just always on my phone. And so, you know, I kind of caught myself being like, wanting to go back to my old ways because I felt safer, right? Like I couldn't figure out how to hear my surroundings. I really felt caught off guard. And it was an inconvenience for me, but I know I really just have to use them, get used to them, try things out, test out the different features, and then I'll be well on my way.
I love it. So is part of what you learned then, like the way you need to learn things now is a little bit different than you thought?
Yeah. Or like different things take different ways of learning, you know? So I think that's it. And also it made me really think about what's important to me, right? Like when I'm in these moments, I need to be able to have situational awareness, right? Like when I'm commuting on the subway, or, you know, I'm in the city, and kind of like how it really made me be more focused around where am I oblivious and where do I need to be a lot more present in my surroundings. And it really caught me off guard, you know, to not have that, to have that like true noise cancellation. And it also made me think about like how many people have lost the concept of situational awareness because they're adapting to these new technologies or these new features, and they're just like very happy to be in their, you know, in their head essentially, right? And be totally absorbed in this like in their experience. But it really, you know, Audrina, I'm kind of jumping around to like the week in review, but I was listening to your Voices of Impact today with Carrie Ann Kelly, and she was just talking about like relationships and how to be really present. And you know, she was talking about like how to organize your contacts, those like your first line contacts from like her cheerleading experience, or your second line contacts. And you know, I loved how she was like putting actionable practices against that. Like if you're close to someone, reach out to them every 2 weeks, or, you know, FaceTime, things of that nature. And I think it really made me think about the power of relationships and how over the last few years, everyone has gotten away from that situational awareness, right? Like we've become so remote and in our own little, like our houses, or, you know, very cut off from one another. And so as we're kind of re-entering society post-pandemic. And I also can't wait to stop talking about post-pandemic life. But like, the AirPods, everyone's like in their own music bubble or like noise cancellation bubble. It's just like we're not really, we almost have to like practice kind of like re-entering society and like reconnecting with people around us, whether they're on the subway, and how to like exist, with people around you, or really reinvesting in those really close connections. And so that was a little bit of a ramble, but there was like a thread for me that kind of took me 360 on that.
I love it. That was a lot. That was a good week.
It was a lot.
It's funny when you start, like you feel, I don't really think I learned a ton this week, or I didn't, take in a lot this week or adjust things. Then you start talking about it and you're like, oh, there's actually quite a bit. Like there's a lot that I could learn about. That's why sometimes just talking about it, like, what did you learn this week? It's good, because then there's things that maybe you didn't even realize that you could take away from it, but you can. And then if you talk about it, you conceptualize it, and now you are more likely to learn from it and then take action on it too. So yeah. I love it. That's part of why we do this.
Just to recap it, to TLDR it, I think what I learned is the way that we evolve living our lives actually means we have to practice the things that we used to be able to do so naturally with more intention, because, I think that's the big takeaway for me. That was my grow or die moment this week.
I love it. And there's a word that you just said that came up a lot in a few of the podcasts I did this week, and that's an intention. Like doing things with intention, like taking, like one of our kind of things that we teach and preach is to intentionally take responsibility. It's one thing to just take responsibility when things are obvious. Like I clearly screwed that up. That was on me. But intentionally taking responsibility is finding a way to take responsibility for it, and then finding a way to learn from it and avoid it, and admit that you have power over changing the outcome, at least to your part, and improving you yourself, right? Your skills, characters, whatever it is, how you handle those situations, and change the outcome moving forward. But it's to do those things intentionally, because our brains are lazy. We do things enough, it just becomes like, everyone's had this where you're driving to work. You've driven to work 1,000 times. You daydream. You're thinking about the beach. You're thinking about an upcoming holiday, whatever. And all of a sudden you're at work. You're like, how did I get here? Like, we're so lazy. Like, but if we do that over and over again, like, we're not getting better at driving. We're not getting better at getting to work. We're not finding a faster way. But if you intentionally pay attention, try to find a better way to get to work. This is a weird example, but it proves the point. If you intentionally bring intentionality into things that you do all the time, you're going to improve them. So one of the things that bugs me so much, like, I have 30 years of experience. It's like, most of the time you have 2 years of actual experience, and they have 28 years of daydreaming, going through the motions. That's not 30 years of experience. That's 2 years of experience, 2.5 years of experience. Right. So, and that was like a fairly aggressive example, but there's a lot of people that do that. They, at the beginning, they work hard to get the promotion, or they work hard to get to where they're at. And then they get there. And then after, a year, 2, 3, sometimes maybe 5 years, now they're just going through the motions. They're not intentionally getting better within themselves or at what they're doing. So the intentionality is kind of my word of the week, and kind of somewhat ties into some of my grow or die moments. But mine is obviously with everything that we've got going on, between new clients coming on and current clients that we have. Obviously, one of our core values is to over deliver, so we're always trying to focus on that. But as we embark on this journey that we're on, I'm so used to just when I go on these kind of excursions, I'm going to say excursions, but when I make these big changes, it usually really only affects myself, right? So I'm much more like, I'll figure it out when I get into it. Like, I'll get out there. I see a tornado, I'll figure it out. I'll turn around. But now I'm in charge. Also, not in charge, but I feel very responsible for, 3 other human lives and 4 dog lives when I'm out there. So I'm not as willing to just be like, I'm going to go out and figure it out when we're out there. So it's to your point, I have to learn this a little bit different. I'm usually used to learning just by screwing up, as opposed to looking at other people and how they screwed up and then learning from that. So I have to be more intentional with how we plan for this, how our plan for this. I have to be more intentional with creating the systems, creating our processes. between, and it could be processes from how do we find campgrounds that have good enough internet that we can work, and we have lots of solutions for that. How do we pack up and take down quickly and efficiently, and then how do we set up our spots quickly and efficiently? If we don't have hookups, how does it look? If we do have hookups, how does it look? How does it look with our schedule, our travel days, our our client and marketing days and content days and all this kind of stuff and everything in between. So being very intentional with setting up the systems and processes rather than just, I'll figure it out. Just having the confidence to figure out. I have to have the confidence that I have to have the preemptive confidence that we'll at least have a good foundation of systems and processes and knowledge before we get out there. So that was kind of my big grow or die moment from the week.
Amazing.
Yeah, we're keeping you alive.
I feel like I'm going to greatly appreciate that grow or die moment. No, but we have been going through a huge transition. So I think that is just a moment where you start to see what you're made of and what you can handle and how you can adapt. And so I think that that's always nice to throw yourself into situations. I'm not saying need to sell everything and get a trailer, but like throw yourself into situations where you are going to be out of your comfort zone and show yourself what you're capable of and what you're made of. And then you'll immediately gain confidence as well to take on new things. So I love it.
Yeah. And trusting yourself that you can fail and come back from it. Like trusting in yourself is a big thing to be able to do. And you can't gain that unless you put yourself in those situations and figure it out. This is just like experience, right? But yeah, Adrina, what was your grow or die moment?
Yeah, I would say that my grow or die moment was a newfound understanding of the importance of being curious when you're working with people, being more inquisitive, and really diving into what it is that they need, what they struggle with, what their goals are, and understanding that the more that you ask them questions, the more that you dig in, the more that you shut your mouth, you will actually be able to listen in and understand what they are getting at. You're also able to kind of dig a little bit deeper and push a little bit further to really get to the core of what the issue is rather than just taking a surface level answer. And when you're able to do that, especially within business, it then allows you to see how much and where specifically you can add value to that person that you're working with. So that was a big one for me.
And I love that one. I appreciate that one as well. It's we had an Uber driver in Vegas, and this just came to me now to bring this up. But we had an Uber driver, and remember how he talked a lot. Remember that guy? Mm-hmm. Super nice guy, sweetheart. But he talked a lot, and he told us that he had a friend who was like, "Man, you talk all the time, and you talk so good, man. You should get into sales." Yeah. And in my head, I was like, "That's not necessarily a good thing for sales. Like, you have to learn how to listen. You have to learn how to ask the right questions." Because we're stubborn. Even if I'm telling you, if I'm the salesperson, I'm telling you the answers to all of your life's problems. But if I'm the one telling you that, you're not internalizing it. You don't believe it, right? It's not the solve to your problem, right? But if you ask the right questions and you bring them to the realization and you allow them to express and admit to you and show you kind of their map, then you're much more clear in the problems that they need solved and how they need solving. Mm-hmm. And you're much more clear on the type of, we call it like the map, like what their history, their map is and how they got to where they are. And we'll get into that in a second. But if you can ask the right questions and uncover those things, now you can solve their problem. And even though it might look like 100 other people's problems, it's still their problem. And it's unique to them because they had a different way of getting into that problem or having that problem. So if you ask the right questions, you can uncover it, then you can solve their specific problem. Then you're more likely for them to want you to be the one to solve them because you understand it and they feel that you understand it. Right. So that's a great grow or die. But I thought I wanted to tell that story because I've heard that before. Like, oh, you talk so good, you'd be good in sales. It's like, no, you wouldn't. You'd be good at the DMV, but probably not in sales or as an Uber driver. I love Uber drivers that are good at talking because they're entertaining. Right. Is there anything you wanted to add to that?
No. Quick thing though. We have 15 minutes.
Yeah, perfect. Because this is a good segue right into. So we have what we call our 10 laws of leadership, or summit laws of leadership, and there's 10 of them. And what you brought up really highlights the first two. So we're going to talk about the first two today. Next week, we're going to break down, Chrissy, we're going to do 3, 4, and 5 the week after, and then 6 and 7, and then 9 and 10, I believe, the week after.
8.
So we got 8.
You skipped 8.
Did I literally skip 8?
Literally.
Look, I don't know how to count. We're going to talk about them all over the next 4 weeks. But your grow or die moment, Adrena, was a really good segue into 1 and 2. And 1 being, when you're communicating, it's not about how the communication affects you or how you hear or see or buy into your communication. It's how the other people see, hear, and buy into your communication. So it's so many leaders have issues with this because they communicate to a room of people and they're communicating to themselves, right? They're like, that made sense. Like, I know that made sense. Like, that was really clear it was clear to me, so it must be clear to them. I don't know how I could have communicated that any clearer. But you have to understand that you're not communicating for you. You're not communicating for you to get the outcome. You're communicating to a team that has to go take the action to get the outcome. And they're not you. So you have to communicate it in a way that gets it through to them. So in order to do that, you have to understand them and communicate to them. And in order to understand them and communicate to them, you have to ask the right questions.
Yep.
You want to expand on that?
I would love to expand on that. I think that, like you said, it's so easy to naturally just communicate that we can communicate the way that we understand, but we have to be so cognizant of the fact that not everybody understands things the same way that we do. And the place where I initially learned that was actually when I was teaching dance. So when I was teaching ballroom and Latin American, I would have to figure out, depending on which student I was speaking to, if they were more in tune with how their body moved and they understood that if I told them that it would move from their toes all the way up through their hands, that they would understand how to connect those dots. Or if I was working with somebody who was more rhythm-based, and I would have to explain what the rhythm felt like or let them hear the music and hear how the rhythm was, and then they were able to gain it. Or am I speaking to someone who's much more literal, and I can say, hey, step forward with your left foot, put more pressure in the ball of your foot, let it go into the heel of your foot, let it work all the way up. So you have to learn how to communicate one move 15 different ways depending on who you're talking to. And so I think being able to bring that into a leadership role, I know that seems like a strange transition, but if you can learn how to teach, you can learn how to communicate, because when you're teaching, you're often communicating in a way that it might not be as natural for you, but you understand how to communicate in many different ways to speak to a room full of people. So oftentimes you might find yourself repeating something, but just because you're repeating it, you're saying it in a different way, and it's going to come through to the different individuals within your team. So being really, really mindful of knowing that your way isn't the only way to communicate. Read the room, understand who you're talking to. When we're speaking from a leadership aspect or an owner-founder aspect, you will start to really get to know the people that are on your team, and you'll start to understand how each of those individuals retain information, how they learn it best, and be able to cater your communication. And oftentimes, like Zach and I will talk, and I'll be like, sometimes you repeat yourself quite a bit. And he's like, yeah, I know, but I'm saying it in different ways every single time. And I'm like, yeah, that's absolutely true. And that's how you're able to connect with more people when you're sharing whatever it is that you're sharing. Oh, I can't hear you. Mike.
Sorry. I do repeat myself a lot, especially when my mic was muted, and then I have to say it again. No, I do, because, and there's another law, and we'll go over this in another few weeks, but it's more in depth in a few weeks. But it's called communicate as the third. So by that, it means you need to communicate in a way that you're paying attention to how what you're saying is affecting the person that you're talking to, and you're paying attention to as like, what am I doing? What am I saying? How am I my posture, my tone. If I lean in, do they lean back? And they're not comfortable with that, so therefore I have to find a different position so that they retain what I'm saying and understand what I'm saying a bit better. So I have to change my tone. Do I have to change the words that I'm saying? Am I speaking to somebody who English isn't their first language, or they don't have the same experience that I do, or the same history, the same whatever, and anything. They haven't had the same education that I had. So then I have to communicate in a way that gets it through to them. And in order to do that effectively, you have to communicate in that third. So you're paying attention to them and their reaction, and you're paying attention to how what you're doing is affecting them. as opposed to just focusing on what you're saying or just focusing on their reaction. You have to focus on both simultaneously. But that kind of into what you were saying is a good segue into one thing that you said, Adrena, is understanding who you're talking to. And that goes into law number 2, which is understanding that everyone has a different map. And what we mean by that at Summit Chasers, when you have a different map, is the map to how you got to where you are right now in front of me is different than it's your map. You have different experiences. You grew up in a different place. You had different parents. You had different friends. You had different teachers in school. You had different traumatic experiences. You had played different sports. Maybe you didn't play sports. You had different hobbies, but we still got to the same place with me trying to communicate to you. And mine is different than yours. Everyone's is different. So you have to understand that I'm communicating to you in a way that makes sense to me based on my map, not your map. Mm-hmm. So that's where, again, to your point, was to ask questions and be more cognizant of what people are saying to you and asking better questions to get that out. So you understand their map. You understand like, ooh, okay, if that's an experience that you had, maybe I should explain this in a different way, right? Or I should maybe avoid this topic, or I should I should focus more on this topic so that it makes more sense. You can conceptualize it better. So it's really believing and understanding and knowing that everyone has a different map to get to where they are. So what you say to them might mean something different to you as it does to them. And Chris, you have an interesting question. You have a pretty interesting perspective on this, being that you've worked in, some of the biggest companies in the world and their HR, high up in their HR departments. Where have you seen this be a weakness or something that's missing when you see these higher level communications, especially from the top down?
Yeah. Well, this concept is what we use a lot in coaching. And Adrena and Zach, the example about the Uber driver who like loves talking. And then you have to like say, okay, but in sales, it's all about active listening, And so I think to Adrena's, point around really understanding how the person processes information and also like, what are they most worried about? Like, in coaching, it's all about like asking the question and then just letting the person speak. Right. And so for people who tend to be more verbose, I probably use 7 words for every point more, that I'm trying to make. And so I really had to learn how to ask my question. And then I think one of my sales leaders was like, yeah, and then just like sit there like this, like actually like hold your mouth shut and like let the person speak, do something to remind yourself, don't speak over that person and just let them, tell the story of where their map, led them. And I think you learn so much more about how the person talks about like perception, or are they more worried about how this is going to impact them versus the team? Are they wondering about, as a leader, sometimes our executive leadership team, in all the companies that I've worked with, they think they have to deliver an update about the business. And they also know that when they're communicating, they're speaking to the company with the realization that the world is going to hear what they're saying. So the message has to be a different balance of like, internal versus external messaging. And so it's always like threading that needle for the leadership team. But I think where that misses the point with some of the, deeper into the organization is individuals aren't really understanding like, okay, in theory, we understand what's happening, but what does it actually mean for our day to day, right? And, their map to this issue is more of like, what does this mean for my job security, the way that my role is going to change? What does this mean for the work that I'm doing? Did I work on something for the last 6 months that's going to be thrown out the window, or is it going to be invested in for the next 6 months? Like, this is what I have maybe a promotion tied to, or this is something that I'm working on that's going to be really meaningful for me in my resume, over the next 3 years. And what does that mean for my career trajectory? So if a company was acquired, right? Like, what does it mean for the acquisition that we just did? Is this, part of the roadmap in the future? So there's a lot of different even just the map back to the topic that's being communicated at the executive level, I think that's what makes, internal communications and external communications so complex and delicate, because there's a lot of people that are reading into like what you're communicating based on their own personal map, right? And I think also when it comes to coaching, on more of a one-to-one basis, you okay, myself, like I might have a perception of I've seen this issue happen 30 times in the last 2 years with like very similar circumstances. So one, I have the pattern recognition to know how we got here, and I know how it's gonna end, right? Like I know how to quickly make a recommendation on how to get out of this problem, right? But a lot of times it's like I might frame the problem in a way that doesn't feel relevant, or I might misdiagnose it based on how it all happened, right? In the way that I perceive the problem to have come up, right? And so the employee actually needs, or the person you're coaching doesn't have to be an employee, right? But like the person you're coaching like actually needs to go through that process in their own primary experience. Like they need to live that exercise out. So even if you know how it's going to go down, or you can get to a solution, I think the power in coaching is like really helping the person unpack, what map led you here, and how do we find the route that will exit you from this, from this exercise, and let them like use that moment, to like inform the way they're going to do it in the future, right? So back to Audrina's example, like if it's, put your foot in front and, lean on the ball of your foot and let it go through to your heel, like they need to go through that exercise to know how to repeat it again in the future, right? And so I think that's how we kind of take some of those fundamental moments and break them down in a way that makes it feel digestible and like intentional and like useful to go through that exercise to the person.
Yeah, and you hit on, we'll end on this because this is a big, especially from what I've seen, and even when you were at Nextdoor, this is one of the issues that, not issues, but this is one of the places that we were looking at focusing on, is this is why your middle management, your mid to upper management is so important, but it's so forgotten in a lot of ways because their job, and there's a saying, I can't remember who made up the saying, it wasn't me, is that the one of the signs of a great leader is to simplify complex commands with big that are based off big picture initiatives or something like that. I was like, big picture initiatives, complex command, and it's your job to simplify it and then throw it out to your team in a digestible way. And if you can do that very well, like that is one step. That is one big check mark that you're on the right track of being a great leader. And there's a story about that, and there was a bunch of engineers and then a master engineer that were working on landing a rover on the moon, but they had no idea no one's been to the moon. This was a long time ago. No one's been to the moon yet. They don't know what it is. It could be all ice picks and like jagged rocks everywhere. So they don't even know what problem they're solving for. But the commanding engineer was like, okay, based on all this information, let's assume it looks like the Sahara Desert, and that's what we're going to solve for. So she took this big complex problem and simplified it for her team to give them a problem that could be solved for. So your ability to do that is a huge indicator of you being a strong leader. But the problem is in these big companies and even medium-sized businesses where, you start to build that mid kind of management team, is that ability it's not focused on. Their development as a leader is not focused on. They're just somebody who is really good in their job and then gets promoted. But their ability to communicate to people effectively, to simplify complex commands that are based on big picture initiatives, and be able to hold people accountable in a way that works for them is so lost. It's almost forgotten. It's like sink or swim. The good ones will get promoted to a director. The rest of you will stay here. And then we'll just keep going back and forth, right? Getting rid of somebody, promoting them. And then, 1 out of 10 will be good. And then they get promoted to something else. So that there's just such a big focus for us. So I think that was great to have brought that up.
Also, Zach, I think like you don't even need an organization that has middle management. When you go from a party of one to a party of two, that's when you start communicating to someone else who comes from a different map, who has a different map, right? And that's when your communication starts affecting more like the people around you, right? And so, I think even if you are, a solo business owner or an entrepreneur, like a party of one, you hire your first employee, it totally shifts the dynamic around the impact of your communications, right? And who you're affecting through those communications. I mean, I was in the basement with my husband. We were like moving a rug, and I had the plan in my head of like, okay, we're going to move these like bookcases out of the way, and we're going to pull the rug out from under, and like Kevin will hold the bookcase and I'll pull the rug. And it was like, he said to me, he's like, I don't know what your plan is here. Like, he's like, cause I'm like, here, I was like, can you go over there? And he's like, what's your plan? Like, I don't know where your plan is heading, And I was like, oh yeah, cause it's in my head. I haven't even spoken it. It just seemed so obvious to me because I've been thinking about it for the last day, like what we have to get done down here,
Yeah. So that's law number one. That's a great example of law number one. You're communicating for you and your map, not for him. So that was a great example.
Yeah.
I think one of the common themes that you'll see through all of these laws is the importance of taking yourself out of the situation and being much more cognizant of who it is that you're communicating to, what you're trying to achieve within your communication. But it's very much about not being self-centered and being able to take a step back and understand that it's not necessarily about you. And I think that can be hard. I know I struggle with it at times, just in communicating with Zach on like a regular basis. Sometimes I'll be thinking about what it is I want or what it is I need, where it is so important if you're going to have effective communication and effective leadership to be able to remove yourself. You're not that important. You need to focus on your people. You need to focus on your team. You need to understand the outcome that you're trying to reach when you're communicating.
I love ending these on an ego check. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
But also like you're dependent on other people to understand your message in order for you to do what you have to do, And so it is right about not having an ego. And, that's exactly right, Audrina, because you're like, it doesn't even matter if you understand, like, if you get across what you want to, like what matters is that you get across what people need to know in order to deliver the outcome that you need them to deliver. Right. And so,
exactly.
That is such a good point.
Beautiful. This one's a little shorter, which is great. It was very to the point. I think people are going to get a lot out of this, but I'm very excited to kind of dive into the other 8. Did I get that? Did I get that math right? At least get into the other 8. By then, we might have added a couple. I don't know. We're always improving. We might mess up on our AirPods, a new set of AirPods this week, and then have another law of leadership we want to put in there. But thank you so much, everybody, for listening and supporting us. We're very excited for where we're going, what we're doing. Excited to bring you along for the ride. And we'll try to complain mostly to Chrissy and not on the camera to everybody else. But we really appreciate you. And until next time, everybody, keep chasing your next summit.